Welcome back to the movie occult review. I kind of take three movies each month and kind of take apart the occult aspects or various witchcraft scenarios that we find in the movies and just see if they're actually up to code or not. Yeah, so just bear in mind there are spoilers, obviously. So if you haven't watched the movies yet, just go and watch them. This month we are doing, I'm doing Starve Acre, Gwen, and the third movie is The Hallow. So, hope you enjoy it. So to start off with Starve Acre. This was directed by Daniel Coco Taylor, I believe you pronounce his name that way. And it's based on Andrew Michael Hurley's novel. It's a slow-burning folk horror that peels back the layers of grief, madness, and ancestral trauma. But at its heart lies a deeply resonant exploration of British folk witchcraft and the land's lingering occult presence. It's set in 1970s Yorkshire. The story follows Richard and Juliet Willoughby, grieving parents whose young son, Ewan, dies under mysterious circumstances. As their coping mechanisms diverge, Juliet turning to spiritualism, Richard to local folklore and archaeological obsession, they become increasingly entangled in the hidden forces still alive beneath the soil of their estate, called Starve Acre. At the film's heart lies the figure of Jack Gray. This is a spectral, folkloric entity whose presence haunts both the landscape and the Willoughby's psyches. For those steeped in traditional British witchcraft or folkloric studies, the name Jack carries deep resonance. Figures such as Jack in the Green, Jack of Kent, and even Jack-o'-lantern have long represented liminal, often chaotic energies, spirits of vegetation, trickster guardians, or underworld intermediaries. Gray implies not only his spectral nature, but his position in the liminal, not black or white, living or dead, ghost or god, but something in between. So Jack Gray is quite clearly a land spirit, a chthonic guardian rooted in place, whose power is bound to the old tree once standing at Starve Acre and the rituals performed beneath it. The motive of the tree and its uprooting is central. For occultists, the felling of a sacred or spirit-inhabited tree, especially one associated with sacrifice or seasonal rites, is a profound magical disruption. When Richard digs beneath the roots, seeking to understand the myths surrounding the tree, he doesn't just uncover history, he reawakens a dormant power. The tree becomes a subtle but potent symbol of the Axis Mundi or world tree, bridging the mundane and the other world. Juliet's turn to seance and spiritualism contrasts Richard's rationalism, but both characters end up doing the same thing, reaching into the unseen without full comprehension. The local spiritualist circle she joins acts as a kind of modern coven, unwittingly tapping into an energy far older and less controllable than they expect. However, their summoning doesn't bring peace, it reactivates the haunting. Jack Gray isn't evil in the traditional sense. Like many land spirits or tutelary daemons, he is amoral. Operating on principles alien to modern sensibilities. His return through Ewan, or what Ewan becomes, is a form of rewilding, a reclaiming of space and life by the land's own spirit. The haunting is not personal, it's ecological, mythic, and magical. My only criticism of the movie would be that it's portrayed from the lens that suggests that pagan practices end in destruction and that pagan people are, and always were, controlled by the spirits they summoned. This is obviously not true, but as we know, most modern day movies that include witchcraft are portrayed from a Christian lens. Starve Acre reminds us that the land has memory, that names like Jack carry weight across centuries, and that the spirits of place, when disturbed, don't always come gently. It's a grim tale, but one rooted in real magical currents. Jack Grey walks again, and with him comes the old world, strange and beautiful and terrible. William McGregor's Gwen is a bleak and atmospheric film steeped in the haunted landscapes of 19th century Wales, but beneath its grim surface lies a rich current of folk horror and occult resonance. While it presents itself as a tale of isolation, loss, and economic oppression, Gwen functions on a deeper level as a story of witchcraft, not the spell-slinging sensationalism of pop culture, but the lived experience of being marked by the land, by lineage, and by power. Set during the height of the Industrial Revolution, Gwen follows a young girl living with her mother and younger sister on a remote farm. Their world is slowly collapsing. Livestock are found mutilated, crops spoil in the fields, and the local community becomes increasingly hostile. The creeping dread that fills every frame is not just psychological, it's a cult. The land itself is charged, heavy with ancestral memory, pain, and the lingering presence of unspoken rites. The film never declares outright that witchcraft is taking place, but for those who are versed in the craft, the signs are unmistakable. The malefic eye of the village, the symbolic omens left on the family's property, and the social ostracism, especially toward a woman who is a landowner, albeit due to the death of her husband, all point toward the classic markers of the witch archetype, not as one who practices magic, but as one onto whom the community projects its fears, its failures, and its suppressed desires. Gwen's mother is central here. A woman holding a fragile homestead together with sheer will, she becomes increasingly afflicted by seizures, bloodied hands, and creeping sickness that feels far more spiritual than medical. Her deterioration mirrors the land's decay, suggesting a sympathetic bond between her body and the farm, a concept familiar in traditions where the witch and the land are one. She is perhaps the unspoken successor in a line of cunning folk or wise women, her power latent, buried, and now punished. The local quarry company, seeking to buy out and consume the family's land, serves as a perfect antagonist from a magical perspective. It represents the machine of disenchantment, the industrial engine tearing through the sacred wild. In this sense, Gwen is not just about the persecution of a woman believed to be a witch, it's about the murder of the land's spirit. The family's resistance becomes a magical act, a holding of space against encroaching oblivion. There are no grand rituals in Gwen, no visible circles or incantations, but magic pulses beneath every moment. The most obvious magic in the whole movie is when Gwen's mother takes the sheep skull, breaks it up, and scatters the shards at the entrance of the farm, acting as a protection against interlopers. The rest is a lot more subtle, so you definitely have to watch out for them. The film draws on the witch bottle folklore, the sacrificial animal motifs, and the weather magic of British folk tradition. Storms mirror inner turmoil, and blood appears where life should grow. The absence of spectacle is itself part of the magic. This is a story about the craft as it is lived, not displayed. For occultists, Gwen is a subtle but potent film. It reminds us that the witch has always been more than a spellcaster. She is the liminal figure who resists, who endures, and bleeds with the land, and in this case burns for it. In its final harrowing moments, the story doesn't end in defeat. It ends in the birth of a witch sovereign, a girl now marked by trauma, but also awakened. The old gods may be quieting Gwen, but they are not gone. They endure in blood, stone, and silence, just waiting. Corin Hardy's The Hallow is often framed as a creature feature steeped in Irish myth, but for those with occult eyes, it's a visceral, evocative work of animistic horror that delves into the consequences of disrespecting the unseen. Beneath this conventional horror structure lies a potent story about boundary violations, otherworld ecology, and the terrifying neutrality of fae spirits when approached without reverence. Set deep in the remote woodlands of Ireland, the Hallow follows Adam and Claire, a young British couple who move into an old house with their infant son. Adam, a conservationist, is there to study and report on the local forest in preparation for development. The locals warn him not to trespass into the woods, claiming the area belongs to the Hallow, a collective name for the she or fae folk. Of course, the warnings are ignored. What unfolds is not just a supernatural attack, it's a territorial response from the land's eldritch inhabitants. For practitioners of witchcraft and the occult, especially those working with animism, hedgecraft, or fae-based traditions, the Hallow feels like a cautionary tale told around a witch's hearth. The fae here are not whimsical, they are chthonic, ancient, and rooted in sovereignty over place. Hardy's depiction aligns more with the pre-Christian Irish view of the she as powerful, dangerous, and not to be trifled with. These are not elementals or helpful spirits, they are beings with their own laws, deeply offended by intrusion and the breaking of taboo. Adam's scientific dismissal of local folklore echoes the classic colonialist mindset that the land is inert, something to be catalogued and altered. In contrast, the villagers live in a careful relationship with the forest, dynamic of fear, respect, and negotiation, familiar to traditional witches and cunning folk. The protective iron and ritual wards used in the film are not theatrical props. They're pulled from real folk practices and used as genuine apotropaic measures. But it's not just a tale of violating a sacred space. The fae in the Hallow abduct, replace, and transform. They enact changeling law that mirrors the old folk tales. The idea of stealing a child and leaving behind something not quite human reflects deep magical fears, identity dissolution, spiritual parasitism, and the uncanny nature of the other folk. In reality, the changeling myth is most probably about autism, but in old myth, it is about lost children. But it's also about the human fear of crossing into the otherworld currents and never fully returning. What makes the Hallow especially effective is, as an occult text, is its refusal to moralize. The she aren't evil. They are enacting their own ecosystem's immune response. The true horror is the protagonist's ignorance of the spiritual law, of the invisible web of obligations that exist between humans and spirit of place. For witches and occultists, the Hallow is a beautifully dark reminder of something crucial. The otherworld is always watching, especially when disrespected. When you trespass without offering, without asking, without acknowledgement, the guardians of that space, like the forest itself, will act not out of malice but necessity. Hardy's film is more than folklore brought to life. It's a grim parable about hubris, threshold spaces, and the high cost of forgetting that the old ways are still very much alive. That brings us to the end of this month's reviews. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you next month for more. Cheers for now. Bye bye.